Welcome to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by Holy Chuck Burgers. Our business is burgers.
Good morning, Katarina Witt. There's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair.
Sponsored by Maxwell's Clothiers, your bespoke tailor since 1961. And now, your host of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, Chuck Basti. And welcome back. This is another segment of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. I'm your producer, Cam LaRock, and of course, I'm with Chuck Basti, our host. Chuck, what's going on?
Cameron, welcome back. It's been a holiday break for us, and I want to be first to wish you a happy new year as well, because this is our very first show in the new year of 2024. How did your holidays go?
It was good. I got to spend some time with family, went to Quebec, visited my grandmother. Haven't seen her in a few years, so that was great. Had a good time, and I'm happy to be back at school and on the podcast with you again. It's going to be a good year.
Yeah, honestly, I said this year after year, but this time, I do mean it this time, 2024 is going to be the breakthrough year for Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. And
this is Chuck's year.
Yeah, this is Chuck's year.
Chuck's year for Chuck's World.
Yeah, and honestly, I couldn't think of a better guest to kick off 2024 off than my good friend Eric Plantenberg, who's going to be joining us today on the podcast. And one of the things that I love about Eric, is he just gets it. I mean, he has an amazing capacity for growth and for mindset. And he's just truly authentic. And I've had a lot of mentors in my life that I'm really happy with, but Eric is right at the top of the list of that as well. And I'm just overjoyed that I met him 10 years ago at an event. And from the moment I saw him on stage and he was talking, I was hooked. And we're going to have him on the show today.
Yeah, Chuck. You sent me a few pictures and a few videos, and you told me to go watch a video on YouTube. And about 2 minutes into that video, I even forgot that you had told me to watch it. I was so invested in it and just everything that Eric had to say. Like, wow, 18-minute video, and it went by just like that. And I forgot that it was even a task of mine. I was just doing it because I was blown away. So yeah, I'm really excited to have him on today and get to know him some more.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard of Eric Plantenberg, you can go to YouTube. He has an 18-minute video that Cam just mentioned as well. And we're actually going to start with that as an introduction to Eric Plantenberg. So we're going to start off this interview as well.
If you have a pen and paper handy, I'm going to have you write down a one-word answer. And if you don't, no worries. I'd love for you to come up with one word to what I'd consider to be one of my favorite questions. Now, before I ask the question, I'm going to tell you that most people would like to sit with this question longer than you're going to have right now, but no problem. You'll have all the time in the world after our event is over today. The question is very simple. It's what makes you great at what you do?
And that's a great segue to bring up my friend Eric Plantenberg. Eric, welcome to the show.
What's up, Chuck? Nice to be here. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's my great pleasure to have you on board. There's so much that we have to cover today. But that video there is from your TEDx talk over 10 years ago. And you had that one question that you posed. And I'm going to ask you now, what makes you great at what you do?
You're asking me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? There's maybe a lot of things that go into this answer, but I'm super curious about what's possible. I think that is the foundation of basically everything that I do. And, one of the things that I think a lot of people miss, because people answer that question in one of two ways. They hit it with, this is what it is for me. Otherwise they stall and they're like, well, I'm not that great at what I do, or I'm not that great at anything. And it's just false. Everybody is great at lots of things. And the ability to see both your potential as well as to see your limitations is, I think, really fundamental. And I come back to the question over and over again, what's possible? what's possible in my life?
Yeah.
And what do I want to do now? We're such habitual creatures. And if your 2024 looks exactly like 2023, for most people, that's going to be a disappointment because growth isn't involved. And let's face it, there's a lot of things that probably went wrong in 2023 or could have went better. At least they did for me, for sure. And then there's probably some things that were really rad or went well. And then how about growing? How about doing more of that and less of the stuff that's frustrating or painful or whatever?
Yeah, well said. I think one of the things that I learned from COVID or post-COVID is just the word pivot.
Yep.
I look at this as being a director on a set, and I'm an actor, and I've been paid to learn my lines. And I wake up in the morning, I go to the set, and the director says, "Hey, listen, by the way, the screenwriters and I didn't like that scene they're going to shoot today. Here are your new lines. We wrote it up all last night, and here are your new lines." And too many times in my life, I would say, "Well, no, I learned these lines. These are the lines I'm supposed to say," and I wouldn't pivot because I was like, "No, I know my lines." And he's like, "Congratulations on being an actor. I know that you know your lines, but now we're going to give you some new lines, and now pivot." But I couldn't do that. And after COVID, it was about who pivots faster. And there's no morality on, why you have to pivot or should you pivot or whatever that it is. But like I said, there's a capacity to having the superpower of pivoting. And you mentioned your word capacity a lot. And I just thought what your view is on pivoting, change, mindset, because that's your real shtick. And why I want to have you on the show today to talk about mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's the question? I'm missing the question.
So when it comes down to, when we go into mindset, there's a pivot point.
Yeah.
So what's your view on mindset and pivoting, your state of being, how you get to that point where you take action to pivot?
One of the things I think about a lot, and I talk about this with people that I'm in partnership, however that may be, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's, whatever I'm working on, is that going back to being habitual creatures, most people think 99% of the thoughts that they think today, they thought yesterday and they're going to think again tomorrow. You wake up in the same bed, you eat the same food, you're with the same people, you drive to work the same way, you work the same computer, type in the same passwords. It's so habitual. And in order for change to happen, in order for growth to happen, you have to be able to do things different by definition. You can't do it the exact same way and then see the results the same way. So for mindset, for me, it's really focused on what is it that I'm doing intentionally that's working, and then what am I doing habitually that's not working and not my truth. We believe so much stuff that other people taught us that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And when you can clarify what is it that's yours that you own, and you can get clear on what is it that you're borrowing from whomever you're borrowing it from. It could be the news, it could be friends, partners, your parents, your childhood, whatever it is. There's pieces of how we see the world that we love and that are true for us and that support me. And then there's stuff that I walk around with every day that's just BS that needs to go.
Yeah, that's the inventory I have to keep every single day looking at and just say, where did I get this from? Is this my society's, thoughts? Is this my family's thoughts? Is my religious thoughts? All these things, are they mine, or did I just learn them? And if I learn them, I can unlearn them. But you said something in your TED Talk video that really, really stuck with me. It's been over 10 years as well. And I'm going to queue up this video as well because I want
that you're going to get, no matter how big they are, they extend far beyond what you can see. So this talk is called The Anatomy of Results, and I believe that every result has three moving parts. You could call it three components, if you will. They're intention, state, and action. So to define these things, intention is, this is your goals and your dreams, this is your life vision, this is your plans, it's everything that lives in your mind that you're imagining is gonna happen in the future. This encompasses intention. Now your state is your state of being, it's your state of presence. This is your optimism and your pessimism.
All right.
Doubts and your
So,
fears. State is the energetic quality of how you show up every day. And then lastly, we have actions. Now, actions are very self explanatory. Actions are simply what you do. So, what I'd like you to do right now is let's take a deeper look at these and let's quantify them. What percentage do each of these components have in the results in your life? So if you believe that they're all equal, then you're going to jot down 33, 33, 33. And if you think that one of them is inherently stronger or more impactful than the other ones, then you'll weight them accordingly.
yeah, I'm gonna cut you off right there because that's a perfect way to go. Because I have to like say I've used this extensively, and I've used this with elite athletes. So
Yeah.
whether I'm talking to NFL football players or NHL hockey players, celebrities, in fact, and they all get it. First kick of the can. But after I went through that exercise with you as well, that was a completely different experience, and it ultimately changed my life. And I just thought I'd just leave it to you to speak to that.
Yeah, well, most people, when you ask this question, almost everybody, and there's no right or wrong answer to the question.
Mm.
It's how are you framing what it is that you do in your life and how you interact with the world. Most people believe that their actions are driving the results that they get.
Yeah.
And these are results in all areas. They're the results they get at work. They're the results they get in their physical body and the relationships that they have. It's really encompassing. And they believe that what they do is what creates the results and the outcome that they get. And if you look at people that are really uniquely exceptional, the highest achievers, they don't say it's what they do. They say it's how they think, and they say it's how they feel. And they
Mm.
might not use those words, but you say, hey, what makes you great at what you do? And they're going to say things like dedication, or they're going to say things like persistence or optimism or grit. And none of those are inherently actions. What those are is those are the catalysts or the fuels that create the action. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I take less action when I'm not feeling well, when I've just been dumped, or when I lost my job, or I don't have enough money, or I don't have enough time. And basically for that point there, it's just like, okay, well, then get to action. And then like, but I don't have any fuel in my emotional tank to take any action because my state drives everything. I mean, literally everything. It gets me out of bed in the morning. It gives me my intention. So my state will give me my purpose of what I want to do, who I want to help, how do I want to like tackle the day today. Any actions whatsoever come from my state. And every elite athlete I've talked to, and I mean literally almost every single one of them will tell me, Chuck, it's 80% action. If you don't take action, but then these guys get into slumps. And I'm like, okay, great. You get into a slump. If you can't score at an NHL level and you're getting a healthy scratch, or you're in the bottom six, you get dropped on lines, what do you do then? He's like, do you take more action? And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, or do you talk to somebody? Do you get your head fixed? Do you go to your mentor? Do you have a psychological sports psychologist or whatever that is? And that state. And then I got them into this like, yeah, good point. But they didn't know that. And they're professionals getting paid millions of dollars.
Yeah. Well, and then a lot of people, at this point of the conversation are screaming. They're like, yeah, but if you don't take action, nothing happens. And I get that. Fundamentally, it's a multiplication formula. It's how clear is your intention? How high is your state multiplied by what action are you taking? So if you're not taking action, man, I totally agree. Nothing's going to happen. I'm a huge, huge believer in taking action. It's just that the action isn't the catalyst towards growth, towards improvement, towards greatness, towards effectiveness. And this is true. You can look at this anywhere. You get two people that are fundamentally putting in the same amount of hours. They're fundamentally putting in the same effort, but they're getting radically different results. Well, why is that? Person A is focusing differently than person B in their mind. They've got a different feeling. Go do a workout and be depressed while you're working out, and be upset about what's going on, and watch the quality of the output that happens versus going into the gym and being psyched to be there, be grateful for your body, be focused on what you're creating, you get a different result, especially over time. This is the other thing that I think that people really, really, really miss is that the results that you get in your life don't happen in a day. They don't happen in a week. They don't happen in a year. They happen over much, much larger time frames. Almost everybody, this is a great thing to talk about at the beginning of the year. Almost everybody overestimates what they can do in a year's time period. They think they're going to be able to do all of this stuff that most people can't do and don't do. And people are like, wow, that's kind of pessimistic. It is, but it's not, because almost everybody underestimates what they can do in a 10-year time period. So our brains are wired for short-term results. And if you look at people that are getting radically different results in their relationships, radically different results in their financial lives, radically different results in their health, they're not thinking about, oh, how do I do this in 60 days? They're thinking about, how do I do this in 6 to 10 years? And I think that that's a really, really big deal. And that's not driven by a focus on action. That's driven by a focus on what's the bigger intention and what's your state.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about you is you just have this penchant for growth. And with that penchant for growth, there has to be a capacity side. So the way I always say this to my friends is like, if there was a problem, a hypothetical problem that was a 5 out of 10 in difficulty, but I had the capacity to deal with that problem as a 3 out of 10 with my own physical ability to deal with that, well, that 5 out of 10 would be a significant problem. But if I were able to increase my capacity to deal with that 5 out of 10, so that way it became a 7 out of 10 problem solving, critical thinking ability to solve a 5 out of 10, then it wouldn't be a big deal. It would be a speed bump. And you're really masterful at, creating growth and mindset and being able to have that conversation for capacity. So you say you're right, like what we can do in a year, that we overthink things that we think I think everybody at the start of the year will start with the New Year's resolutions. Statistically, they say everybody stops middle of February at the gyms. I can now go back into my gym in the middle of February and not have to wait for a machine, because we don't get the results we think we should be getting in that 6-week time, which taken us years to get to that point of what we want to release the weight or the energy or the state or whatever that is that we're working on. So I thought we could speak a little bit about growth and about capacity of how you see that.
Yeah, well, I think it fundamentally starts with time frames, because again, if I'm gonna think about what is my capacity to learn something new, for example, I'm free diving right now. It's my new sport. I love it. I talk about it a lot. I really don't know much about it at all, but I'm super into it. It's kind of like advanced snorkeling. You're just out in the water. You can do it in swimming pools as well for training. And you just take a breath, you go underwater, and then you come up. I mean, that's it. But what people that are trained in this have the capacity to do is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, they can go under the surface of the water over 100 meters. They can hold their breath while swimming actively over 3 minutes. They can do things that would literally kill most people. Yeah. If most people off the couch went to do that, they would die. Yeah. And then over time, you grow. The reason I love the support is because it combines multiple disciplines, which I really, really love. I love being in nature. That's great. So I'm out seeing fish, being in the ocean. B, it requires physical activity, which I think is really good. You got to swim, you got to breathe, you got to do these cool things. And then the last piece is it's very meditative. It's the opposite of an adrenaline sport. The more adrenaline you have, the less you succeed. So you have to calm your mind. You have to focus without all those distractions. And then that's very transferable to other things, parenting being one of them. I mean, like I've got an 11 and a 14-year-old, and anybody that has kids or has raised kids knows that there's those moments when it hits, it gets hot in the kitchen, and you don't want to lose it, and you want to be a role model, and you want to listen, and you don't want to, lose your cool. So, I'm a big believer, Chuck, that how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's a cliche. I don't even know who to quote it to, because I've heard it somewhere. Is it really T. Harbecker? Yeah, that's great. I'm a big believer in that. And it's true in my life that, how I focus on my work it adds capacity to how I can focus when I'm parenting. And what I'm doing athletically allows me to do things professionally better. So I try to play in as many lanes. I mean, not too many, but 3 or 4 different focuses at all times.
And I want to kind of bring up something because I know it's a tremendous accomplishment. The fact that you climbed and summited Mount Everest. I mean, some people climb Mount Everest. They get the various boot camps and base camps of where they are. But you actually summited Everest, obviously there it is right there. Just spectacular, that picture. Where does that picture come from? Where is that? Like, most people haven't seen that. What is that?
Yeah, I took that photo as we had just finished up setting up our camp. This was Camp 2 on the north side of Everest. And the crazy thing about it, you can't really see it in the photo, but the ropes, you literally have to tie the tents down and stake them to rocks. Otherwise, when the winds blow up, your tent ends up 4,000 feet down the side of the hill, which is super negative if you're in the tent. And it's really negative if you're not in the tent because you lose all your stuff. This is a picture of the 3rd step. We're descending here. My climbing partner's in the front. I'm up on the top. It was a long time ago. It's still a crazy memory for me right now. I'm really glad I did it, especially with kids the age that I have right now. It kind of makes me a little nauseous to think about doing it again. Every once in a while, I was actually just talking with my 11-year-old about it the other day, and he's like, "Dad, no going back to Everest, man. Like, hang out with you."
What a great shot.
Yeah. My daughter was a year and a half when I finished that project. And, I've been pretty mellow. We spend a lot of times in the mountains now. And I was actually, Sherry and I were just in the Khumbu, which is the Everest region of Nepal, a month ago. Yeah, I actually just took her up to 18,500 feet. We were just at the base of Everest and Lhotse and Nuptse and Choyu. It was amazing to be back there. I hadn't been back in a while. So these are really, really fond memories, and it was something I enjoyed doing for sure.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because obviously you didn't learn how to climb mountains while you're on Everest. I mean, obviously it's the high water mark of what most climbers would actually aspire to if they could do that. And I want to tie that to capacity and growth, like what you had to do to be an overnight success, quote unquote, air quotations, to be able to summit that, and all the hard work that is the tip of the iceberg that nobody sees below the surface, which is the hours, the dedication, the sacrifice, the money, the resources, the coaching, all that you had to do. And that's just one thing that you've done, but I want to use that as an example because it's the biggest one I could think of. For you to segue to, what is under the surface of growth and mindset to give people results and goals that they want to achieve this year.
Yeah, what comes to my mind, and I kind of can't believe I'm going to tell this story because it's such a diss on another person. And I don't tell it to diss him. And obviously I don't even know the person's name. So it's not like I have a bone to pick with him or any problems. But before I climbed Everest, I was on the airplane. I was trekking and kind of getting to know the region, getting to know the culture and the people, and also doing some training. And I'm flying home, and there's a guy next to me on the plane from Dallas, Texas. He's an attorney. Not to diss people from Dallas, or
Cowboys fan.
But the story ends poorly. So I just want to, but just stereotypical, massive ego, massive attitude. Like I'm pretty special in the world. And I said, yeah, what were you doing in Nepal? And he's like, oh, I was on Everest. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. How did it go? And he goes, well, it was a lot of lessons learned. And I'm like, okay, well, what happened? He goes, well, I got to base camp and that was hard. But then when I was climbing up to Camp 1, I mean, it just didn't go at all. And I was on the mountain. I mean, this is supposed to be a 60-day climb. He was on the mountain for 3 days and he came home with his tail between his legs. And I was like, well, did you get injured or what happened? He goes, no, I just wasn't comfortable. I really didn't have the skills and da, 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 da. And I'm like, well, how long have you been climbing? He goes, well, this was my first climb. Like what? Like, when did you learn how to do rope work and put crampons on and basic skills? And he's like, well, we did that at base camp. And I'm like, okay. And then we get a little bit further into the conversation, and he's a year out of a divorce. He's got a crashed up partnership at his law firm. I mean, he's got a very, very narrow skill set. And this actually requires me to think more about the comment that like how you do anything is how you do everything, because clearly he's got some skills somewhere, but there's just like damage like all the way around. And what happened is his team sent him home because he didn't know how to climb and he was going to die.
Yeah.
And you just cannot do great things by having a big ego being, buying it. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I started climbing out of a rebound from an injury that I sustained kayaking. For about a 10-year period, I was whitewater kayaking all over the world. I loved it. I had amazing mentorship. I literally was taught by people on the U.S. Olympic team. One of my buddies, a Canadian buddy, Ken Whiting, won the worlds in freestyle boating. So I just was around amazing kayakers. I loved it, learned the sport, spent 10 years kayaking all over the place. And I had a really, really bad shoulder injury that required surgery. I couldn't climb anymore. I couldn't paddle anymore. So I wanted to use my body. I wanted to be out in nature. And I had some fundamentals about learning. So when I picked up climbing, I started progressing. And I thought, how far can we take this? And I had lived in Alaska for a long time. So I'd always seen Mount McKinley as this, oh my goodness, like it would be amazing to climb that mountain, but almost impossible. And then as I started to raise my bar, and then I had an amazing climb on McKinley, learned a lot. And, from the time I first put on crampons and boots to the time I summited Everest was a 9-year period.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. It was a really cool chapter of my life. And again, I still love the mountains, but that chapter closed. I do have aspirations to climb the 7 summits, the highest mountain on every continent. I have a couple left, Antarctica and Argentina mainly. And those are very doable climbs. And I think even with kids, I could probably chase after those without a lot of risk. But, it was a pretty cool chapter of my life, and I took a lot away from it. So I don't know if this is helping at all, but
yeah, well, the reason why is because like the things that you've learned there, whether it be breath work, whether it be fitness, whether it be wellness, whether it be balance, any of these things get directly transferable into life. Like you're just using a project. I might use hockey, you might use kayaking or climbing, but at the very end of the day, everybody just has a capacity that needs to be moved forward, and you just found something that you're really passionate about that that allows you to go through hardships and hit your face against the wall and fail again, and then come back and retreat and then come back at it again. Because if you weren't passionate about it, you'd be like the guy from Texas. Yeah. And you just come back with your tail between your legs on the flight. And I ran into you over 10 years ago when you were in Toronto and you were giving a talk here for your abundant living retreat. And I was just like, I'm really intrigued. And as luck would have it, or as the universe plays out, you very generously created a contest for a writing contest, for a person to say, hey, why should I come to the abundant living retreat? And I won that. Or I don't know if I won that, but they voted me in.
No, you won that. It was on our blog, and people had these amazing written written answers to like what is abundance in their life and how does it all flow. And you were just not randomly, but you were voted by the community. It was really, really rad, Chuck. And that's how you and I first met. I remember calling you and emailing you for the first time because I didn't know you when you were in the audience.
Yeah, which I thought was a joke. I thought there's this one, like someone's punking me right now. This is Ashton Kutcher on the other side of the line, pretending to be Eric Plantenberg because he knows how much I want to go to this retreat. But the conversation that I shared in that written blog would have never happened. It was a conversation I had with my mother. Yeah. And I won't go into the conversation, but I mean, I had to go through a lot of work and growth and reassessing things in my life in order to have that conversation with my mother, which I shared on that blog, which people voted for. And then I show up at your retreat in Palm Springs. It'll be 10 years ago this February in 2014. And I was just this guy just thinking I'm going to rock this and this is going to be easy. And it's Palm Springs. And I left Toronto, it was minus 20 Celsius. And I hear lawnmowers when I get there. There's oranges on trees in the resort there at the Hilton in Palm Springs. And I just got my ass kicked in silence as well. So that's a Silmar. We'll get back to that in a second. But the Abundant Living Retreat in Palm Springs was my first introduction to you. And you came out with a balance side that you had, that I want to get into about your relationships and your finances. And if they weren't all in balance as it went, then your life suffers in some capacity. So I thought we'd just kind of start with that, introducing the Abundant Living Retreat with that.
Yeah, I do. The way that it frames up in my mind, and there's certainly different ways to break this down, and lots of people talk about it in different ways. But for me, I've got these 4 big buckets. One of them is career. What are you doing professionally and what are you doing to serve other people? The next one is relationships. How are you connecting with other humans, whatever the relationships you're in? And that changes in different phases of your life. Like many years ago, I talked about this without having kids. So kids wasn't the component for me. And now we've got kids, and Sherry and I, between our blended family, we've got 6 kids and 5 grandkids. So there's a lot of family relationship and 6 parents and like all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And then actually 4 parents, 5 parents, I lose track. And then, working relationships, team relationships, that's a big piece of all of our lives. Then there's physical health, what's going on in our bodies, and then financially, what's going on in the money category. We still have to buy groceries, pay for housing in colleges, and live in the world. And I've certainly experienced this. I think almost everybody can relate to this, that when one of those areas isn't going super well, it doesn't stay contained in that area. Yeah. It bleeds into and affects the other areas of our life, sometimes dramatically. You have significant health challenges, and that can absolutely be devastating to your career, be devastating financially. If you're having financial problems, that can impact relationships, that can impact your career or your health in lots of different ways. So it's not like, and I think that men are inherently worse at this than women. Not to be stereotypical, and probably get a bunch of criticism for saying that, but it's just my observation. And as a man, I can say that it's easier for men to create these silos and think, oh, I'm doing great over here, so let's just not address this stuff. And that ends up biting people in the ass in a big way. And again, women have the capacity to do that as well too. So I think it's really important to look at life holistically and to be making sure that you're tending all parts of your garden, for a better term.
Yeah. And one of the things I learned at your ALR retreat while I was down there was you came up with something that hurt my brain. Like, it literally hurt my brain when you said, read this book called Power versus Force by David R. Hawkins. Yeah. And I went home and there it is right there. And it gave me a headache. I had so much resistance to this thing that had a physiological effect on my brain, where it felt like I was dehydrated. I hadn't drank in days. But one of the things you came up with that, which really revolutionized my thinking and just growth, was the graph on energetic, where you stand state-wise. And when you brought that out in that AL, there we go, right there. And I thought you maybe just take a second to explain this power versus force and how it affects your state and where you sit on that grid.
Yeah, well, this book is tricky one. It's not light reading at all. A mentor gave it to me in 2003, 2004, and I think it was 5 years later that I finally understood it. So, I don't say that to be intimidating. Pick up the book. I would encourage anybody to give this a read. And I guess I'll preface it by saying, if anyone thinks that radical change in their life is going to be easy and it doesn't come with headaches and dehydration and frustrations and not getting it, man, if that's your personal experience, that you've been able to do massive growth and it wasn't hard and it didn't require a lot out of you, please call me and tell me how you did it.
Yeah, me too.
Because I've never experienced it that way. So this is really the core of state. It's our lives, and this is an analogy that it's not perfect, but it's somewhat visual, so I'll use it. Our lives have an energetic current flowing through them like a river. And when we want to go from A to B, from where we are here to where I'm going to go there, and we're operating out of shame and guilt and apathy and fear, it's literally like having a whitewater river pushing against you.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't even matter how hard you try, because you get blown down. It's like I can paddle, I can swim, I can fight the current, and I'm not getting very far, if anywhere at all. And then there's a state where when you're really working out of desire and anger and pride, you can actually get places and you can get pretty significant gains, but it comes with a collateral damage. It comes with an a utilization of energy that ultimately doesn't last.
I call it a glass ceiling.
Yeah. It's a glass ceiling. Otherwise, it's just not sustainable. And you can look at any political movement. We could go right to Nazi Germany.
Yeah, good one.
There was a lot of hate. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of that. And they got a lot done as far as mobilizing people, as far as taking land, winning wars for a little bit. And then ultimately that all crumbled on itself, thankfully. It just isn't sustainable. So one of the things that I'm really cautious of I'm really observant of, I should say, is that when I see people with an agenda that's really based in anger or pride, I often know that that's just not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
That current, however, flips and it starts to support you and push you forward when you can operate out of neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason. You've got support that even if you don't know exactly where you're going, there's something that's supporting you and pushing you along. And then those higher levels of joy and peace, really, really are incredibly powerful. And it really is. It's the difference between forcing something. And nature is such a great example of this. You can force against the wind, against the rain, against the weather, but ultimately they're more powerful than you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's one of the cores. And when that book really framed and helped me to understand where I was operating out of lower states and then how to operate out of higher states.
Yeah, and that's what hit me right in the face, because I remember doing an exercise with you, and you said to we had a blank sheet, and you said, put what you think is the highest resonation, and they were all mixed up, the words, and I put love on one side, and the dichotomy of that was hate.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that wasn't accurate, because like you can get a lot of things done with hate, but it's a very glass ceiling, where you could end up with.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get past that point. You can't sustain it at all. It takes way too much energy. You say Nazi Germany in your example as well. The one I use with Nazi Germany is like when the last final days of the Third Reich were winding down in May of 1945. Every single one of those henchmen that were Hitler's, right-hand men were all trying to climb over each other to get to that Führer point, and they all were just killing each other, like literally, because it's just not sustainable when you have that energy, where that toxicity gets entrenched. But like you say, when you flip that over, and I have to be aware and conscious of what state am I sitting in right now? Mm-hmm. Where am I resonating? And then from that point, then I can actually do my work. Then I can catch myself. Then I can see where my thought process is going. Is that going to pride? Okay, I know where pride leads to, because that's ego. Okay, that's not where I want to be resonating out of. How do I flip my energetic state so that way I can go to what flows, as opposed to me fighting against the current? And that literally changed my life. So if I left a retreat and only had that, that would have been an absolute spectacular win. But it's 10 years later, and I don't know if you can see this with my background, but I got my Abundant Living retreat here. I don't know if you can see it. But that's my journal that I kept into it. And I was an angry young Chucky. Chucky was not happy. And Chucky was entitled because Chucky won this, as we said. And it was, it was a very expensive to me retreat in American dollars to Canadian dollars. It was a long flight. And I went alone, not knowing anybody. Just jumped on a plane and got there, and then literally had to get from the airport to the retreat, which was another story. But one thing I trusted is when you said, when you get here, everything will be provided for you. You will need nothing after that point there. And it was safe for me to do the work inside of that. But Chucky was angry that day, my friends. And, by the end of the retreat, the clouds had parted. And, I was like, you're such an ass. And this is how your life goes, but only 100% of the time. And I always say that if there's a way to find a way to mess things up, Chucky will find it. And when I realized that Chucky had to kind of take a nap somewhere, go to timeout, so that way Chuck could do some thinking and calmly say, where are we at? What state are we resonating in? That changed. And that allowed me to do 10 years of work. And we're going to fast forward now to where I just drove across the continent to go to your Abundant Living Retreat leadership in Oregon. And now we can bring up some pictures of Oregon as well. There we are in Juniper Reserve. Gorgeous resort, in Oregon as well, which I'd never been to Oregon as well. And that was like us looking at the classroom. We had our first day out there on the island where the swans nearly killed us. There's the Holy Chuck truck in the parking lot there.
Nice.
And that was drove us all the way across, and then there's our first meeting. And I took this picture and I had to put my camera away because obviously we were in timeout for when it comes to electronics. But that there was a revisit. And you said something to me there that in that chair, as I sat there, you said, I want you to fast forward. That was Friday. I want you to fast forward to Sunday. And if you didn't get value out of this and you didn't like this, why was that? And immediately I put my hand up and I said, because I did it my way. I didn't do it the design of how you designed the retreat. And that shows up everywhere in my life. And I realized that I can get a certain glass ceiling of how Chucky gets things done all the time. But again, it's a glass ceiling and there's no ability to get past that level. And then I have to come back and say, okay, I don't like doing yoga at 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't like going to cold caves. I don't like sitting out here getting attacked by loons, but there's that growth factor. And I trust that you're going to make it safe for Chucky to sit here and do the work. And you did that. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it's been honestly, the work is easier to be done with your coaching and your leadership and your safety and your confidence I have in knowing that you have my back and that you don't do anything inside of our experience to demean or hurt or belittle or any of the things that I might take personally in a growth opportunity where I'm in pain or I don't like it or I'm uncomfortable. So I thought we'd just speak a little bit about your Abundant Living Retreat, how you created it, and share a little bit with the viewers.
Yeah, well, Chuck, it's such a cool thing to have you part of that community, and you bring so much. You bring so much humor. You bring so much humility. You don't hold back. It's a cool experience to share with you. So, it was long time ago. It was 13, 14 years ago, as you know, but for the people that don't know, I made my living for almost 20 years as a professional speaker, a trainer, retreat leader. That was my profession for a long time. Really good friend of mine, Roger Sipe, and I created a company called Freedom Personal Development. And for many years, Roger is still rocking that company out. freedompersonaldevelopment.com. You can check out Roger's work. And I was about 15, maybe 12 years into it. And a mentor of mine asked me, she goes, okay, Mr. Goal Setting Guru, you've just had a baby. You're about to climb Mount Everest. Like, what's your big professional goal? If you could create anything professionally for people, like, what would you want them to experience? And it was honestly, Chuck, it was stream of consciousness. I hadn't thought about it in this way before. I said, what I would create is a 4-day retreat where people had to fly away from their homes, away from their jobs, away from their kids, away from doing dishes and making food. And they would be locked down and just work on themselves. They could really take a hard look in the mirror about how is their professional life going? How are their key relationships? How is their physical health? How is their financial life? And do what we've been talking about, for the last hour here, really assess where could I be more awesome and where could I take all of these things? And then where am I stuck? And where do I just need to really change some things? I figured 4 days was long enough. The people that were really committed to it, you could take a couple days off work, get there, whatever. Ultimately, I would love to have people for a week. And we do that for the leadership retreats. But at first, that's kind of a large ask from schedules and whatever. But it needs to be more than a weekend. People can drop in and literally they show up on Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, and correct me if your experience was different. I mean, most people feel like they're gone, like on another planet. They're just really, they're out of their lives. And from that space, you really create a blank canvas, and then you can start to really dive in. And what's really important for me, and you didn't mention this, and that's cool, but I'm gonna bring this up. It's not me that drives the quality and the content of the retreat. It's really when you put a group of people from different backgrounds, different ages, different experiences, and they're all working on the same macro issues, but the micro issues are totally different. You'll have a CEO of a company sitting next to somebody that's, brand new in their career in their 20s. And you'll have a grandmother who's raised their children next to somebody that just had a baby. And you have a professional athlete next to somebody that's trying to lose 60 pounds. And they're working on the same things, their career, their relationships, their physical health. You've got multi-millionaires, and you got people that are really just getting started or have had some financial challenges and they're building. And you put them in a room, and there's an alchemy that I could never take credit for. And it's really, really beautiful. So yeah, that's a little bit about the retreat.
Yeah, and I think like when I first got to the retreat in Palm Springs, like the one thing that was in my space was I was comfortable in growth, knowing that it would be uncomfortable because that's what I came there for. Like I wanted certain things in my life that I wanted to overachieve for, and the skill set I had was really good at getting me to the level I could get to. And I couldn't get past that level. Yep. So I had to do something differently. I had to think differently. I had to take that lobster shell and shed that off and grow. And I knew, like you said at the start of the show, that this was going to be, interesting. I just didn't know how interesting it was going to be. It was kind of like, how creative is this guy going to be, with all this stuff? And it was actually really funny because your humor in it, your lightness, the humility in that room, like you said, and you had some amazing leaders that were just always there. And it was like if you had a parachute and your parachute did out, they would give you the parachute that they had as their spare chute or whatever. And so it just made it really easy for me to do the work. And although I was angry and upset, it had nothing to do with the people in there. It was my experiencing and my triggers that I've gone through in life that I hadn't processed, those unhealed wounds. And then leaving that retreat, that's when the real work came, because that's when it gave me time to go through and figure out how do I do this and take on new views. And because you give me a lot of different tools that I just only had a hammer, so everything looked like a nail. And Chucky just hammered the shit out of everything with that hammer. And he was really good at it, right? But at the end, when I need a screwdriver or any other tool that would give me a different result, I just didn't have it in my tool belt. And that's what you kind of gave me. So I want to preface that moving forward because you have a retreat coming up in April in Asilomar, and you're going to be doing this again for the first time in about 10 years. And I'm really excited about this, and I want to have you share with why you're doing this again and what people will get out of this and how they can actually find more information about it. Because I truly believe, I'm not just saying this because you're on the show, but you're on the show because I believe this, is that I truly believe, and I don't know who's watching this or from what context they are seeing this, what you're going through in your life right now. I don't know what you're going through, but what I do know is that there's a place where you can have a better set of skill sets to get a different view that could possibly give you a better life of growing through these things. And I trust you enough to have you share what you've got a plan for us in April.
Yeah. Well, I think the start of what I would want to say to anybody, if somebody asked me about the retreat, it's actually really important for me to talk about why I stopped doing it for 10 years. Because and then why it came back. I don't say this to criticize anybody that makes their living training in the personal development world. There's amazing trainers, retreat leaders, coaches, gurus, whatever you want to call them. There's really some spectacular ones out there. And then there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of people that have attended a couple of workshops, learned something, and then really just, they're sick and tired of their jobs. They have problems in their life, and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a coach, or I'm going to be a speaker, or I'm going to be this. Yeah. And they honestly, the problem with it, in my view, and again, I did this for 18 years before I stepped away from it, was the answers are not told to you, in my opinion. Nobody can tell you how to live your life. Nobody can say, hey, here's how you need to think, act, or be to get the best results in your life. Exactly. It doesn't work that way. What is helpful, what my mentors have done to me, is they haven't told me things. They've asked me questions. They've helped me to look at and then to question basically everything. Because when you believe a fundamental truth, you believe something, and if it's not true, then you're stuck. You just can't go past that. I had an experience as a kid that really blew my mind. And I think almost everybody listening to this can relate to it, not maybe directly, but in a parallel experience. When I was in 9th grade, I'm a prepubescent boy that has never sung. I was a hockey player and a soccer player. And for some reason, I found myself thinking, well, maybe I should learn how to sing. This might be fun. I like music. And I go to choir, and first day of choir, I get kicked out, but not for behavior issues. There was nothing like that. I literally did the first la, 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 la. And the guy said, Eric, I'm sorry, but you can't sing. And I remember going, oh, I never knew that. Okay, great. I can't sing. It was like singing was something you could do or you couldn't do. I got dismissed from choir, and I spent the next 20 some years fully believing that I couldn't sing.
Yeah.
What a crock. You know what I mean? And then maybe nobody has ever told you that you can't sing, but somewhere along the line, almost everybody has dropped in to a falsehood about who they are as a person, that if that gets removed, everything starts to change. I spent 15 years in my adult life believing that I had fundamental flaws as a man inside of my romantic relationships. I had them with girlfriends. I had them with a fiance. I had them with my first wife. And these were all great women. And I didn't have great relationships with any of them for a lot of reasons. Obviously, there was a lot that went well, but fundamentally there was something missing. And when I understood what that was, it all changed. And I went to dream marriage, like, oh my God, dream marriage, in a very, very short amount of time, because I reframed and I got to see something about myself that just fundamentally wasn't true. So years and years and years after the Abundant Living Retreat is gone, I mean, every year the phone rang and people were like, hey, when are you going to do Abundant Living? And I'm like, I'm not speaking. I'm not doing that. I'm not at the front of the room right now. And an ancillary reason to that, and the number one reason, was I was working on me. I was growing as a professional in ways. I had left the training business and I'd started a beverage company. I had gotten divorced and was getting remarried. I had kids. There was all of this stuff that I wasn't landed in myself. So I wasn't ready to talk about stuff because I didn't want to, in 2016 and 17 and 18 and 19, talk about the stuff that I learned in 2007. I wanted people to be current. So when a lot of that started to integrate, my divorce, building a new company, being a parent, changing my body, another surgery. When I was ready to talk about my experience on those things and to share what I was processing, then it lit back up again. And the community is really, really amazing. You know, there's hundreds of people in the abundant living community that their lives have been changed, their relationships, their health, their all of it. And they want it back again. So who am I to say no? Let's do this.
God bless you for saying that as well, because it could have been just the easy thing to do, just to keep having your revenue streams be dependent upon personal growth and your company that you created, and as well. And I owned a recruiting firm for 25 years, and I was really good at it. I made really amazing money at it. And when I realized I didn't want to do it anymore, I had to say, well, can I live on like literally half or a quarter of what I was making? And my lifestyle was pretty much attached to that. So the answer was no. I can't give up my recruiting firm until I finally just said no. I'm like rock bottom. And I woke up in a hospital bed, 186, standing heart rate. And my cardiologist is 300 pounds. And I say, how am I in ICU? And how are you not in my spot? And he looked at me and goes, because I don't have stress in my life. I'm like, a valid point. The guy makes a valid point. Yeah. And then I was just like, well, now I have to do things differently, because now I got to reinvent how I make money. Now I got to I want to write a book. So since then I've written 3, but I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know how to create a new job or a new career. But I knew my life depended upon, and my health and my wellness depended upon it. So for you doing the exact same thing, I just tip my hat to you, because it's a very noble thing. There's not a lot of people I know that can make that conscious decision where they can disconnect from what their identity is or what they've been known for, and then to come back and then to reinvent, use the content that you have, update it. And now you're going to bring us to April. And so you've got a new retreat coming up in Asilomar, which is a wonderful looking. I've been to Monterey, and I've been down to Pebble Beach, so I've seen the coastline as well. There we go. But how did you choose Asilomar?
It was a couple of graduates of the retreat. I'd never heard of Asilomar, and oh my goodness, it is spectacular. This picture doesn't even do it justice.
Yeah.
It is that amazing. It's a retreat center that was created over 100 years ago, and its sole purpose is for people to do inner work. And it's a perfect spot. So some graduates of the retreat said, hey, you should do the next retreat at Asilomar. So Sherry and I flew down there and spent a couple days and just soaked up all the goodness of it. And it's absolutely the right home for the retreat.
And what do we have planned for Asilomar in April?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so people, they arrive on Wednesday, unplug from all of it. There's no work. There's no taking care of it. All the meals are prepared. Lodging is paid for. And Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it is a remarkable journey into you. And I lead and facilitate the questions, but you figure out where you're going to take it. And I think that's really the magic of the retreat. All the retreats are different. People ask for agendas, and they're like, well, what are we going to do on Thursday? And what are we going to do on Friday? And honestly, I don't know. We're going to talk about intention, state, and action. We're going to figure out how those things impact your career, your relationships, your financial life, and your physical health. And people spend different amounts of focus and time on those different areas. So a lot of people are, if you're A+ in all 4 of those things, please come to the retreat. You could help teach it, and it'll be a great experience. And I'm not an A+ in all 4 of those things. I'm working on these things as we go. So it's very much, there's no guru land here about people telling you what to think, what to believe. It's a time for people to do work. A lot of people come with their spouses and business partners, and a lot of people don't. And a lot of people show up and don't know, like you, a lot of people show up and don't know anyone else in the room. And that's scary for them, because, it is. I love talking to people before the retreat. I make myself super available. So if you want, if somebody really wants to go, they need to talk to they should talk to you, Chuck, or they should talk to me or one of the other graduates of the retreat. Just to make sure the expectations are right. I tell everybody that the retreat is not a cure-all. And it's actually, in some circumstances, not the right thing for people to do. And, for example, if somebody's going through a really catastrophic health challenge, or they're going through a divorce, or they're, at a really critical point in their career, a lot of times I would say, don't come to Abundant Living this year, come next year.
Yeah.
Focus on what you need to focus on right now. And then sometimes that's not the right situation for people. So, go to abundantlivingretreat.com, learn more about it. And if you want to get on the phone with me or one of the other graduates, that's really what I'd recommend for everybody.
I always say that, life presents opportunities to me that I'm prepared for, or that I'm at least open to being prepared for. And it finds me. It finds me the timing when it's possible. And it was certainly like that with my first ALR in 2014. And I had done some work before that, which if I didn't do that coursework before I came to ALR, I would have walked away the first day. Actually, no, you would have throat punched me the first day. You wouldn't have. I know but at the same time, I would have been a lot of work, and I mean a lot more work than I was coming in there thinking that.
Chuck, you were a lot of work. Don't make this.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I'm still a lot of work, but it's a matter of how much is a lot of work versus what you've learned, and being able to come back and have dialogue and conversation about that experience and what triggered it was for me, and how it wasn't your fault. This is my experience, and these are the things that really make communication. I just had conversations on Sunday where I woke up, literally my phone had 2 phone calls, and I finished both those phone calls, and I said to my girlfriend, I'm like, those calls would have been dramatically different 4 years ago. I would have throat punched that guy over the phone, gone through this and that. And I'm so glad that both of those phone calls were resolved in a wonderful way. We both walked away and we had heard each other. We had understood the point. We respected their ability to have that point. And I understood and accepted that's who they were, or that's who I was. That's what their opinion was. And that's made a huge difference in all that. So I was going to say, I'm glad that you said that it's not for everybody, but if you're interested in coming to Eric's Abundant Living Retreat in April, like I said, we'll have all the links posted on the YouTube channel as well, where you can go get more information, where you can ask questions, where you can have calls or setups and just say, hey, I need some more information before I make this. I'm interested in, but what does it look like for me? What are the logistics? What am I going to get? What's my takeaways? What are my expectations coming into this? Because we all have those expectations or unmet expectations. And let me make a rational decision of where I'm at in my life right now. And some will do it and some won't, depending on what timing is. And I'm not looking to convince anybody. What we're looking for is a buffet line. Is I'm going to let you come into the buffet line. You're going to have an empty plate. I'm not going to tell you what to get. And you're going to walk down that buffet line. You're going to pick whatever works for you. But our hope and aspiration for you is that you have a full plate of whatever works for you. And my plate will be different from yours. But I just want you to have a full plate of tools or happiness or options that you're going to have to move forward to have a better life. How's that?
Love it, Chuck.
Yeah.
You're an ambassador. You're an ambassador of the retreat. And I love that. I'm glad it was valuable for you, for sure.
So what are your takeaways that you're looking forward to now leading this in April? Obviously, I say facilitate because you're right. You hit the nail on the head. The body brings in the experience. You facilitate. You ask questions. You're masterful at that. You listen really well. You pivot. You adapt. You have the empathy to see where people are in their moment. You have a superpower with that, and just sit with their experience and say, "Yeah, I totally got. That's where it is. Can I suggest this or whatever like that?" So for you, it's got to be a different experience altogether. But what are your expectations? What do you hope for?
Honestly, I have no idea, Chuck. The retreat's curriculum is simply things. It's not a theoretical retreat. These are the things that I do and that the leadership team of the retreat does in their life now. So for me, it's just those 4 days are really an extension. It's a lot of fun to share it. It's a lot of fun to walk through how to do these things. I mean, honestly, who doesn't want to wake up in the morning with a ton of energy, towards the things, the projects that they care about most, be deeply connected with other people, feel great in their body, and have plenty of money to do it all. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and the reason that we don't advertise, the reason that I don't do the infomercials and that I don't, you know, advertise on Instagram and all these things is because I think that there's so much of that out there already, that's BS, that I just let it happen organically. You know, I do talk about it on podcasts, obviously, like this one, but almost everybody that attends the retreat is there because of a referral from somebody that's already attended the retreat and graduated. So I think it's really rad that you're an ambassador and that you want to spread the word about it. But you know, we'll see what happens we'll see what happens in April.
I love that take. I had Mark Manson. He's the author of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah. I love that show, by the way. I need to meet that guy, because we would have a great conversation.
He's a different dude. Like, I had him on the podcast. You know, this is the day his book came out, and we didn't know what was going to happen with that book. And then he came into Toronto to do a book signing, and you know, he made $50 million off of that book. And the conversation I had with him afterwards was just like, my life is worse now than it was before I wrote that book. You know, I made more money sitting on my couch playing video games than I did then going out to a bookstore where I got a lot of energy and people showed up and there was fire marshals there and we're at capacity and you can't come in anymore. I mean, his book was kind of like Star Wars of the nonfiction field. And I say Star Wars knowingly that you are a big fan of Star Wars as well. But it was just that big of a book. And, you know, he has the exact same take that you do. He's just like, you know, it's bullshit. It's like all the self-improvement stuff, you know, like how it's prodded at you or thrown at you or inauthentically packaged. It's bullshit. You know, come back, figure out what it is that drives your state, move those things there. You know, it's going to hurt a little bit, but I promise you in the end, if you keep doing it, it will be better than what you're sitting in right now. And it certainly cannot be worse, because growth will always put you in a spot where you're actually in action. You know, you're actually taking measurable results to get things done as well. So I'm glad that you said, you know, the bullshit side as well, because that's the reason why I'm coming in April as well. Because the one other thing I wanted to say about April is I've always had a bucket list. You know, going to your retreat in Oregon gave me the ability to go see the Field of Dreams. In Iowa, I got to go through the Rocky Mountains, see a game in Colorado, go to the Arches National Park, which you gave me the tip on as well. But I've always wanted to go see John Carlos and Tommy Smith's statue at San Jose State. You know, and I had John Carlos in my podcast last year. He's the iconic picture of the 60s where they're doing the Black Power salute in Mexico in the game 68. And so I'm going to fly in for that. I'm going to be the Peter Norman in that statue, which I've always wanted to do, and then go up to do the Abundant Living Retreat as well. But to kill another one of those bucket lists off to be with you guys and do that work. And we haven't said anything about Byron Katie as well. She does the work. I know you're a big fan of her. I can't tell you how much she's changed and her work has changed for your referral. And you've been always really good at acknowledging her as well for what she's done and the I guess the referral that you use for her work as well.
Yeah, maybe for another show. And
Yeah.
then we're out of time. Yeah, I love Katie. I love her work. She's amazing. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have you back on afterwards as well. If you want to go to our YouTube links down below, we'll have all the links there for Eric's Abundant Living Retreat coming up in April in Silmar in California as well. If you need any conversations, you need to call, feel free to reach out. We're very accessible. Put the socials up as well. And just get more information, ask some questions, get some answers, and then make the right decision that's for you. So, Eric, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you, as always. I look forward to seeing you in the new year as 24 kicks off now, and really looking forward to seeing you at the retreat.
Well, Chuck, thanks for having me today. I love the conversation. You have a blast, and we'll catch up in a couple months.
Thank you, Eric. That is Eric Plantenberg, one of my most favorite people in this world as well. And I want to thank Eric for coming on the show today. He could have been anywhere he wanted to be. So obviously I'm still a little tongue tied right now of the experience, because as I'm talking about this, there's a whole narrative going on in my mind about, you know, where I was before I came into this work and where I would be probably if I didn't. And I'm so grateful for Eric as well. So that being said, we're going to bring up Cam LaRock, my great producer as well. Cam, I'm just going to give you a quick little take on what you thought of Eric.
Um, Eric made it pretty hard to do my job. I'm trying to, like make sure everything's going well, make sure the show is going accordingly, but I'm getting caught up in what he's saying and I'm missing little cues here and there. So, I mean, I'm hoping that the viewer takes in the show the way I did because it was a difficult time just focusing on my job when I'm also in the presence of Eric.
I can totally align with that because I would be like, I'm ADHD as all get out. So I don't know how you do what you do as well, but you did a great job bringing up the cues and whatnot.
Thank you.
I wanted to just end with Eric's YouTube video on gratitude as well from his TED Talk. Before I get to that point, I want to thank, our sponsors, Mixed Chicks, Holy Chuck Burger as well, our good friends at Maxwell Clothiers for really facilitating this as well. But Eric's take on gratitude to me really.
When you focus on gratitude, even for a second, notice how your body reacts. Most of you threw up 2 hands on the second one. You act quicker, you act with more certainty, and it just feels different. If you have the ability to focus on gratitude, even just for a little bit, and this is a daily practice, you can get massive results.
And I'm going to give Eric the last word on that one as well, because I just can't, follow that up as well. I want to thank Eric Plantenberg for having on the show as well. Thank you for joining us at Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. We will have all the links below to Eric's Abundant Living Retreat in Asilomar in California in April. Please reach out, join us. Love to see you there. Love to have you around. Love to hear your stories as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Chuck's World.